The morning of the accident began like any other day in the small, quiet town. People moved through their routines without thinking twice about them. Shopkeepers opened their doors, children walked to school with half-finished breakfasts in their hands, and buses hummed along the main road. No one knew that something life-changing was about to happen to a young orphan girl who had already seen more than her share of hardships. The girl had lived her whole life inside a small orphanage on the edge of town, a place that tried its best despite limited resources. She was gentle, shy, and kept mostly to herself. She was known for being quiet, but she was not unfriendly. She simply learned early in life that silence sometimes felt safer than speaking. That morning, she was sitting in the back seat of a car belonging to a volunteer who often drove children to school or medical appointments when needed. It was one of the few times she ever got to leave the orphanage for something other than school. She sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out the window at the world passing by. The volunteer spoke to her now and then, asking simple questions to make her feel less nervous. She answered politely, but her voice stayed small. The sun was bright that morning, almost too bright. The kind of light that makes everything appear sharper than usual. The roads were clear, the air cool, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But life often changes in moments, like these moments that feel safe, moments when no one expects danger. The car had just turned onto a long stretch of road, lined with tall trees when everything happened at once. A loud screech tore through the air, followed by a sharp, terrible crash. Birds flew from the treetops in a sudden burst, startled by the noise. Dust rose from the road as metal clashed against metal. The car spun slightly before coming to a stop against the trunk of a large tree. Silence followed. Heavy, frightening silence. A driver in another car up the road saw the accident and rushed toward the damaged vehicle. When he reached the scene, he called out, hoping for a response. The volunteer in the driver's seat was conscious but dazed. The girl, however, was lying still in the back seat, her head resting sideways against the window. Her eyes were closed, and she wasn't moving. The man who found them immediately dialed for help. While waiting for the ambulance, he tried to speak to her, hoping she would stir, even a little. But she didn't single quotes T. Within minutes. The sound of sirens filled the quiet road. Paramedics arrived and carefully pulled the girl from the car. They checked her breathing, her pulse, and her injuries. Her heartbeat was present but faint. Her breaths came in shallow, uneven waves. They lifted her onto a stretcher and rushed her into the ambulance. The volunteer kept asking if she would be all right, but even the paramedics didn't have an answer. They moved with urgency, their faces tight with worry. The ride to the hospital felt longer than it truly was. Inside the ambulance, one paramedic held the girl's wrist, feeling her pulse, while another monitored her oxygen. They kept speaking to one another in quick, professional tones. But the girl remained silent, unmoving, lost somewhere deep inside herself. When they reached the hospital, the emergency team took her in immediately. Doctors examined her injuries, ran scans, checked every detail they could. The final conclusion came a few hours later. She had slipped into a coma. When the news reached the orphanage, the director was devastated. She rushed to the hospital as soon as she could, her eyes red from worry. She stood beside the girl's bed, gently brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She whispered promises and prayers, hoping her voice might somehow reach the unconscious child. Days passed, then weeks. The girl lay quietly in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped softly throughout the day and night. Nurses checked on her regularly, adjusting blankets, cleaning her face, brushing her hair so she wouldn't look neglected. One nurse placed a small stuffed toy beside her, saying children should never be without something soft nearby. A doctor who had been assigned to her case visited her every morning. He wasn't just doing his job. He truly cared. Something about her stillness bothered him. She was so young, so fragile, and so alone in the world. He often wondered what she must have gone through before life placed her in an orphanage, and then again in a hospital bed. He made sure every test was done, every option explored, and every possible improvement considered. But still, her eyes remained closed. The nurses sometimes said they saw her fingers move or her eyelids tremble, but nothing more. At first, everyone felt hopeful, thinking these tiny movements meant she was about to wake up. But days went by without progress. The movements became rare and were dismissed as simple reflexes. The room she stayed in was quiet most of the time. A small window allowed sunlight to fall onto her bed, and the curtain swayed gently with the breeze from the air vent. Sometimes the doctor sat beside her, speaking softly as if she could hear him. He told her about the weather, about the busy morning in the ward, or about the new flowers blooming outside. He didn't expect a reply, of course, but something inside him refused to let her feel forgotten. The orphanage director visited as often as she could, though running the orphanage left her with limited time. Each visit was short but meaningful. She always placed her hand gently over the girl's left hand and whispered, "We're waiting for you. Take your time, but come back to us." The hospital staff slowly grew used to seeing the girl's quiet form in that bed. They spoke kindly about her, wishing she would one day open her eyes and speak. But life has a way of testing patience, and as the weeks turned into a month, hope began to fade. Still, the doctor refused to give up. He kept looking for signs, for anything that might hint at improvement. He tracked her brain activity, her responses to touch, her breathing patterns. Every tiny detail mattered to him. Then, one morning, something unusual happened. It was early, so early that most of the hospital had not fully awakened yet. The hallway lights were dim, and the cleaning staff had just finished mopping the floors. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft glow through the window of her room. The girl's heart monitor suddenly beeped faster. At first, the nurse on duty thought it was a glitch. Machines sometimes gave false alarms. But when she stepped into the room, she saw something that made her freeze for a moment. The girl's eyelids trembled again, but this time, they didn't stop. They kept moving, flickering as if she were struggling to open them. The nurse hurried to her side, calling her name gently but firmly. "Can you hear me? If you can hear me, try to open your eyes." The girl's heartbeat grew stronger. Her breathing changed, becoming deeper and more purposeful. The nurse felt her chest tighten with hope. She quickly pressed the call button for help. Doctors and nurses arrived in a rush, startled by the sudden spike in the girl's vitals. The doctor who had cared for her so faithfully was among them, and when he saw her eyelids fluttering, he moved closer at once. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe. You can wake up now." Slowly, painfully slowly, the girl opened her eyes. They were slightly unfocused at first, adjusting to the light after weeks of darkness. She blinked, then blinked again, her gaze traveling across the room until it landed on the doctor's face. Her lips parted, attempting to form a word, but no sound came out. The doctor leaned closer, encouraging her with a gentle nod. She tried again. This time, a faint, broken whisper slipped through. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a question. It wasn't anything the doctor expected. She whispered a name no one in the room recognized. The doctor and nurses exchanged confused glances. The girl's eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and urgency. She whispered again, a little louder this time, trying to make them understand. The doctor reached for her hand, reassuring her that she was safe and did not need to speak yet, but she shook her head weakly. Her voice trembled as she forced out the words she had been holding somewhere deep inside. "I need to tell you something. Please. Please listen." Her heartbeat sped up once more, and the doctor felt a cold ripple move through him. Something about her tone, her fear, and the strange name she said sent a chill down his spine. The girl looked straight into his eyes, her own filled with a seriousness no child should ever have. "I saw everything," she whispered. "I saw how the accident really happened. And it wasn't just an accident." The room fell silent. The doctor felt his breath catch. Nurses stood frozen. For the first time since the accident, the girl was awake. But whatever she had to say next would change everything. The news that the girl had woken up spread quietly through the hospital that morning. Nurses whispered to one another in the hallway, and even staff from other departments found excuses to walk past her room, hoping to catch a glimpse of her sitting awake after so many weeks of stillness. It felt almost unreal. Many had believed she might never open her eyes again. Yet here she was weak, frightened, and struggling to speak. But awake, the doctor stayed by her side longer than usual that morning. He pulled a chair close to her bed so she wouldn't feel alone or overwhelmed. The girl's breathing was uneven, and every now and then her eyes darted around the room as if she wasn't sure where she was. Waking from a coma could be confusing, frightening, and disorienting, especially for a child who already had no family waiting for her. The doctor understood this well, so he kept his voice soft and steady. He asked her simple questions at first, whether she could hear him, if she felt any pain, if she knew where she was. She nodded slowly, still catching her breath. Her voice was too weak to answer most questions, but she tried. Her eyes held a fragile awareness, as though her mind was trying to gather pieces of memory scattered all around her, but soon her expression changed. A kind of urgency rose inside her, something stronger than fear. She clutched the edge of her blanket and whispered, "Please, I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled, but her intention did not. The doctor leaned in, sensing the weight behind her words. "You can tell me," he said gently. "There is no rush. You're safe here." But she shook her head, insisting that he had to listen now. The nurse stood nearby, watching with quiet concern. She could tell the girl wasn't simply confused or waking from a dream. There was something else, something deeper pressing on her. The girl swallowed with effort. Her throat was dry after weeks of no speech, but she pushed through it because the words she carried felt important. "I saw what happened," she whispered. "I saw everything." The doctor frowned softly, unsure if she meant the accident or something else. He waited for her to continue. The girl took a slow breath, her chest rising and falling unevenly. "It wasn't an accident like everyone thinks," she said. "There was another car, hiding, watching, and someone in it. Someone who shouldn't have been there." The doctor's eyebrows pulled together, but he didn't interrupt her. She went on, her eyes flickering like she was seeing the scene again. "I know I was hurt. I know I was inside the car when it happened. But I wasn't only there. I was above it somehow. Like I was looking down. I could see the road. I could see the trees. I could see the car that hit us. And I could see the other one behind the trees." Her voice broke slightly. She blinked hard to keep herself steady. "There was a man inside that second car," she continued. "He was watching. He knew what was coming. And after the crash, he didn't help. He just drove away." The doctor exchanged a glance with the nurse. It wasn't the kind of information a child would invent, especially one who had been unconscious during the entire investigation. But they still didn't know what to make of it. The doctor placed a calming hand over hers. "You've been through something very difficult," he said carefully. "Sometimes our mind creates images or feelings while we're unconscious. It can be confusing." The girl shook her head with surprising strength. "I know what I saw," she said. "I saw his face. I saw his jacket. And I know the first letters on the car door. This made the doctor freeze. Children who had suffered trauma often mixed reality with imagination, but this was different. She was giving specific details she couldn't possibly know. He gently asked, "Can you tell me the letters you saw?" She nodded and whispered them slowly. They weren't complete, but it was enough to make the doctor's breath catch. He had read every report, every police note, every detail. Nowhere had anyone mentioned another car. The nurse took a small step back, as if the room suddenly felt smaller. The doctor looked at the girl, his eyes softening. "You are safe here," he repeated quietly, but now it sounded more like a reminder to himself than to her. "Thank you for telling me. I believe you're trying to help." But she wasn't finished. She looked around the room anxiously, then back at him. "There's more," she whispered. "Someone else was hurt. Someone the police never found. I saw her. She was in the other car. And she was scared." Her voice cracked. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "She needs help. Please. You have to tell someone." The doctor felt his heart tighten. This wasn't just fear or confusion. This was something deeper, something she believed fully. And even if there was only the smallest chance that her words were real, he couldn't ignore it. He told the nurse to step out for a moment and get the girl some water. When she left the room, he turned back to the child. "I'm going to listen to you," he said gently. "But you've just woken up. We need to take things slow. Can you try to rest for a little while? We can talk again soon." But she shook her head again, more urgently. "I can't rest yet. I keep seeing it every time I close my eyes. I can't stop seeing it. I remember the trees, the road, and I remember the woman in the other car." She was calling out. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I think she was hurt before the crash." A cold shiver ran through the doctor's spine. He didn't show it, but her words settled in his chest like a heavy stone. Sometimes children sensed things adults ignored. Sometimes they remembered moments with surprising clarity. But this was more than memory. This was a plea. The doctor stood slowly, adjusting the blanket around her arms. "I'll come back soon," he promised softly. "You're not alone. I'm going to check something, all right?" She seemed calmer at his reassurance, but watched him with wide, worried eyes. He stepped out of the room and closed the door halfway. Outside, the nurse was waiting, still holding the cup of water. "Is she all right?" The nurse asked quietly. The doctor lowered his voice. "She's frightened. More than that, she believes she saw something important." He paused, then added, "She mentioned another car, and someone else who might have been there." The nurse's eyes widened slightly. "But the police said—" "I know what they said," he replied. "I know the reports. But she's giving specific details, letters, a description." He rubbed the back of his neck, torn between logic and instinct. "Something about this doesn't feel like confusion." The nurse nodded slowly. "Do you think it's possible she overheard things before the coma? Maybe someone talked near her?" "No one mentioned these details," he said, "because they weren't in the reports to begin with." The nurse looked down the hallway, the weight of the situation pressing on both of them. The doctor exhaled deeply. "I think I need to call someone," he said finally. "Not because we know she's right, but because we can't ignore her. Not when she believes someone might still be in danger." The nurse didn't argue. She trusted his judgment more than anyone's. When he returned to the girl's room, she looked up at him with anxious eyes, as though afraid he had already forgotten everything she said. He sat down again. "I'm going to help," he told her. "But I need you to take small sips of water and try to breathe slowly. You're safe. No one can hurt you here." She nodded and accepted the water cup with weak, trembling hands. The simple act of swallowing seemed to cost her a great deal of effort, but she tried anyway. After a few moments, her voice steadied a little. Will you tell them? She whispered. Yes, he said. I'll speak to the right people. But first, I want you to rest your body. You've been asleep for a long time. Waking up is hard work for the brain and the heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, but the lines of worry on her face didn't fade. Every time I try to rest, she whispered, I see her again. She's calling for help. The doctor felt something inside him shift, something between duty and compassion. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're brave for telling me this, he said softly, and I promise you, you're not alone anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. He stayed with her until her breathing slowed, until she finally drifted into a light, uneasy sleep. Even then, she moved slightly every few minutes, as if her dreams were still filled with images she couldn't escape. The doctor watched her for a long moment before standing up. He straightened his coat, took a deep breath, and walked toward the hallway phone dot. His heart pounded, heavier with every step. He didn't know if everything she saw was real. He didn't know if the police would take him seriously. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had to make the call, and once he did, nothing about this case would ever be the same again. The doctor made the call, but the moment he hung up the phone, a strange heaviness settled over him. He stood in the hallway for a long second, staring at nothing in particular, trying to understand why the girl's words felt so urgent, why they pressed against his thoughts like a weight he couldn't ignore. The hospital hallway was quiet that afternoon. Visitors had not yet arrived for evening hours, and most of the staff were busy with their routines. Machines beeped softly in nearby rooms. Carts rolled across the floor. Nothing looked out of place. Yet inside the doctor's chest, something felt out of rhythm. He walked back toward the girl's room slowly, replaying her trembling voice in his head. I saw everything. It wasn't just an accident. He wasn't sure whether she had seen something real, or whether her mind, shaken by the trauma, had created an illusion. But the specific details she had offered, the hidden car, the letters on the door, the woman calling out made him uneasy. When he entered the room, she was awake again. Her eyes were open, but they looked distant, as though she was drifting between the present and memories she didn't want to relive. She glanced at him when he stepped in, almost as if she feared he had left her for good. You came back, she whispered. Of course, he said softly, pulling the chair close once more. I promised I wouldn't leave you alone. She relaxed a little, though her fingers still clutched the blanket as if holding on to something fragile. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet filled the room like a warm blanket, calming the tension that had been rising since she first opened her eyes. Finally, the doctor asked, Do you remember anything else about that day? Only if you feel ready to talk. The girl hesitated. Her eyes dropped to her hands. She traced a line on the blanket with her finger, gathering courage. It's not just what I saw, she whispered. It's what I heard. The doctor leaned slightly closer, listening without pressing. I heard voices, she continued. Not from the car I was in. From the other one, the man. He was talking to someone on the phone. He said it had to be done. The doctor felt his breath pause in his chest. She looked up, reading his expression. I'm not making it up, she said quickly, as if afraid he would think she was lying. I didn't say you were, he replied gently. And he meant it, but inside, his mind raced thought she shouldn't have known about any of this. She had been unconscious before she even arrived at the hospital. Police had concluded the crash was caused by a sudden loss of control from the other driver. No one had mentioned a second car. No one had even suspected foul play. Yet the girl's voice held a steadiness that didn't feel imagined. Could you hear exactly what he said? The doctor asked after a moment. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Not everything. Just pieces. He said something about making sure someone didn't talk, and then he said he would come back to check, but he never did. Her small shoulders trembled slightly. The doctor felt his stomach tighten. The situation was becoming heavier than he had expected. He didn't want to scare her, but he also couldn't ignore the possibility that she had witnessed something dangerous, something that might involve people who wouldn't want her talking. He took a deep breath. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. "You're brave. Very brave." Her eyes filled with tears, though she didn't cry. "I wasn't brave in the car," she whispered. "I was scared. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. I could only watch." "That's not weakness," the doctor said gently. "Sometimes surviving is the strongest thing anyone can do." She looked at him for a long second, as if trying to understand how he could speak with such certainty. The soft knock on the door broke the quiet. The doctor turned. A man in a neatly pressed shirt stood outside one of the local officers. He seemed calm, but his eyes carried the seriousness of someone who didn't waste time. "You called?" the officer asked. "Yes," the doctor replied. The officer stepped inside and looked at the girl with a mixture of surprise and concern. "I heard she woke up," he said. "That's good news." The girl looked away shyly, uncomfortable with a stranger in the room. The doctor motioned for the officer to join them quietly. "She remembers something about the day of the accident," he said. "Something important." The officer nodded and crouched slightly so he wouldn't tower over her. His tone softened. "You don't have to be afraid," he told the girl. "You can tell me anything. I'm here to help." She hesitated again, but the doctor gently encouraged her with a reassuring nod, so she repeated the story, the hidden car, the man inside it, the woman calling for help, and the strange phone conversation she had heard. She told it slowly, carefully, as though afraid she might say something wrong. Throughout her explanation, the officer's expression shifted. His brows furrowed slightly, his jaw tightened, and his eyes flickered with something that looked like concern mixed with disbelief. When she finished, he stood up and stepped aside with the doctor. "She's been through trauma," the officer whispered quietly. "You know how the mind can fill in gaps." "I considered that," the doctor replied. But she remembered letters on a vehicle door. Letters that don't match anything from the official reports. The officer rubbed the back of his neck. Accidents can be messy. Maybe she saw a reflection or imagined a second car. The doctor's voice lowered, firm but calm. "She's certain about what she saw. And after everything she's been through, I think we owe her the benefit of the doubt." The officer paused, clearly torn. Then he sighed, the weight settling on him. "All right," he said. "I'll check into it, quietly, no promises, but I'll look." "That's all I ask," the doctor replied. Before the officer left, he turned to the girl again. "Thank you for telling us. You did the right thing." She nodded, though her eyes stayed uncertain. Once he was gone, her breathing grew uneven again. The doctor sat beside her. "You did well," he told her. "Try to rest now." She leaned back against the pillow, but her mind was clearly not ready to settle. After a long silence, she whispered, "What if he comes back?" The doctor's voice softened. "No one even knows you're awake except us. You're safe here." She shook her head lightly. "He said he would come back." "Sometimes our memories mix fear with reality," he said gently. "But even if someone did return, they'd have no reason to find you here. You're protected. Nurses are always nearby. I'm here. You're not alone." The girl looked at the door again, then at him. "Promise me you won't leave me alone for long." Her fear pierced him deeper than he expected. "I promise," he said. Hours passed. The girl drifted in and out of sleep, her breathing sometimes calm and sometimes frightened. The doctor checked on her often, even when he didn't need to. Something about her vulnerability touched him in a way that reminded him of why he chose this job in the first place. By evening, the hospital grew busier as visiting hours began. Soft voices echoed down the halls. Families gathered around beds. Food trays rolled from room to room, but the girls' room remained quiet. The doctor was finishing paperwork at the desk outside when a nurse approached him. "There's someone asking questions about the accident," she said. "Not the officer from earlier. Someone else." The doctor looked up sharply. "Who? I don't know," she said. "He didn't give his name. He's in the lobby, asking which room the girl is in." The doctor felt the air shift. Something inside him tightened. "Did you tell him?" he asked. "Of course not," she replied. But he seemed tense, like he really wanted answers. Without another word, the doctor stood and walked toward the lobby. His steps were quick, controlled, but underneath them was a pulse of worry. When he reached the lobby, he looked around carefully, and there he saw a man standing near the reception desk, speaking to the receptionist with a calm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore a dark jacket, the kind someone in a hurry might throw on. But what struck the doctor wasn't the jacket dot, it was the man's face. Something about it felt familiar, uncomfortably familiar. The doctor's heart tapped. Harder inside his chest. Dot. Was this the man from the girl's vision? Or was his mind trying to connect pieces that weren't yet clear? He stepped toward the desk. The man turned, his eyes meeting the doctor's, and in that instant, the doctor felt something sharp, something cold, settle inside him. Whatever this man wanted, whatever reason brought him here, it had nothing to do with kindness. Dot, and everything to do with the girl who had just awakened. The next morning came with a quiet softness. Light entered through the large windows of the hospital room, falling gently across the girl's face. She lay still, but not the kind of stillness that worried the doctor. This time it felt peaceful, almost like her mind was sorting through all the things she had said the night before. The nurse entered with slow steps, holding a small tray with warm water and a fresh cloth. She checked the machines again, but they were calm. Not a single alarm, not a single sudden spike. When the girl opened her eyes, it wasn't with the same panic as before. She blinked a few times, as though unsure what time it was or how long she had slept. Her breathing was steady. Her hands weren't shaking. She looked around the room and then at the nurse beside her. The nurse smiled softly. "Good morning. How are you feeling now?" The girl didn't answer right away. She moved her eyes from the curtains to the chair in the corner, then down to her hands, as though she was confirming she was still here, still alive. Finally, she whispered, "Did I say something last night?" The nurse hesitated. She didn't want to frighten her, but she also didn't want to lie. "You did speak," she said gently. "You said some things that surprised us. Do you remember any of it?" The girl's brows pulled together. She looked like she wanted to remember, but couldn't reach the memory. "I saw something," she murmured. "I don't know if it was a dream or if it happened when I was gone." The nurse didn't push. "You woke up in the night and spoke about danger. A doctor called emergency services because it sounded serious." The girl lifted her head a little. "Danger? What kind of danger?" "We were hoping you could tell us," the nurse replied. The girl fell quiet again. Her fingers curled around the blanket. "I don't know," she whispered. It felt real. A little while later, the doctor came in. He carried the same calm expression he always had, but there was a clear alertness in his eyes. He didn't treat this like confusion caused by waking from a coma. He treated it like something worth understanding. "Good morning," he said softly, as he pulled the chair closer to her bed. "You look stronger today." She nodded slowly. "I want to talk to you about what happened last night." he continued. What you said made us concerned for your safety, and maybe for someone else's. But we don't want to force you. We want you to share only what you feel ready to. The girl stared at him for a long second. Then she took a slow breath. Heard voices, she said finally. Not like hallucinations. More like memories that didn't feel like mine. I don't know how to explain it. The doctor didn't react with disbelief. He wrote nothing down quickly or sharply. He didn't label her words. He listened. What were the voices saying? He asked calmly. She closed her eyes for a moment, as though trying to pull the memory from a deep place. Someone was calling for help, she whispered. A woman. Her voice was shaking. She kept saying, don't let them find her. The doctor's posture changed. Not with fear, but with focus. Find who? The girl swallowed. Me. The room fell into a heavy silence. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him. I think someone was trying to protect me, and someone else was trying to get to me. That's what I felt. The doctor leaned back slowly, his mind clearly turning. But instead of rushing to conclusions, he spoke gently. Memories can mix with dreams, especially after a long coma. But we should still try to understand what you felt. You're safe here. Nothing can reach you. But if there's something in your past that you remember, even a little, it can help us figure out what happened before you arrived here. The girl lowered her gaze. I don't remember anything from before I woke up. Nothing. But the voices felt real. Not like imagination. Real. He nodded. Then we'll take it step by step. After a few tests and a light breakfast, she sat quietly, looking out the window as the nurse helped adjust her pillows. The day was peaceful, but something inside her wasn't. She felt a strange pull, like her mind was trying to uncover a truth hidden deep beneath everything she didn't remember. Later in the afternoon, a social worker came to speak with her. She introduced herself with a warm smile and sat down beside the bed. I'm here to help with anything related to your care, outside the medical side, she said kindly. The hospital told me a little about your situation. You don't have any family listed here, and you mentioned not remembering anything from your life before you woke. The girl nodded. That's okay, the social worker continued. Sometimes memories return slowly. Sometimes they return suddenly. But you're not alone. We'll help you figure things out. The girl watched her, her eyes calm but distant. Do you think I'm imagining things? The woman shook her head. I think waking up from something as serious as a coma can stir parts of the mind we don't fully understand. But I believe what you felt was real to you, and that makes it important. The girl's shoulders loosened slightly. I just don't want to think I'm losing my mind. You're not, the woman assured. You're recovering. And sometimes recovery brings strange moments. As the day went on, the girl tried to rest, but every time she closed her eyes, she felt that same echo of a woman's voice, pleading, desperate. At one point, she whispered to herself, why would someone say not to let them find me? Even though she had no memories, something inside her felt certain that those words mattered. Dinner came. Night arrived slowly. The machines hummed quietly beside her. The hallway outside was calm, with the usual low sounds of people walking and nurses speaking softly. Nothing felt unusual, but when the clock reached late evening, something changed. She turned her head toward the window. It was dark outside. Only the faint reflection of her room showed on the glass. But the moment she looked at it, she froze. Not because she saw anything frightening, but because she suddenly felt a sharp pressure behind her forehead, like a memory pushing its way forward. Her fingers curled against the blanket. Images flickered in her mind, quick, blurry pieces. A dim room. Heavy footsteps. Someone's hand holding hers tightly. Someone whispering, stay quiet. She gasped softly. The nurse hurried over. What's wrong? I saw something, the girl breathed. Just for a second. The nurse touched her shoulder gently. Try to breathe. What did you see? The girl shook her head. I don't know, but I felt like I was hiding, and someone was protecting me. The nurse stayed with her until she relaxed again. Though the memory stayed buzzing beneath her thoughts, by the time the doctor returned for his evening rounds. She seemed calmer but distant. He sat down again. I heard you felt something earlier. Do you want to talk about it? It was just a fast memory, she said quietly. I didn't see faces, only shadows. But I think someone was helping me hide from someone else. He nodded slowly. Your memories may return in pieces. It can be confusing, but it's a good sign. It means your brain is healing. The girl looked up at him with honest fear. What if remembering hurts? Then we take it slowly, he said. You're safe. Nothing from the past can harm you right now. She wanted to believe him. Later, when the room grew quiet again, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind wandered through fragments she didn't fully understand. Voices that weren't hers. Fear she didn't recall living. And that one sentence echoing louder than everything else. Don't let them find her. Who were they? And why did someone risk everything to keep her hidden? As she slowly drifted into sleep, she whispered into the silent room. I need to remember. And just like that, another faint memory surfaced, a door being slammed, a man shouting, and someone pulling her into their arms, whispering, It's going to be okay. I won't let anything happen to you. The girl's eyes opened again. She didn't know who that voice belonged to, but she knew one thing for sure. Someone in her forgotten past loved her enough to fight for her, and someone else wanted her gone. The truth, whatever it was getting closer. The day after the girl's memory fragments began returning, the hospital felt different, even though everything looked the same. Nurses still moved through the hallways with soft steps. The machines still beeped at steady rhythms, and sunlight still slipped through the windows like usual. Yet there was an invisible tension in the air, especially around the girl's room. It wasn't fear. No one felt afraid of her. It was the weight of the unknown. She had spoken words that none of them could easily explain, and the doctor knew that ignoring them would be irresponsible. By early morning, he stood outside her room with a thoughtful expression. He had already called the emergency line the night before, sharing only the details necessary to raise attention, but not alarm her. Now he had to prepare her for what came next. Inside, she was awake, sitting upright with her back supported by pillows. She looked tired but alert, almost as if she had been expecting something. When the doctor entered, she lifted her gaze slowly. You slept a little? He asked. A little, she whispered. But the memories don't stop when I close my eyes. He pulled a chair closer. I understand. And I want you to know we're taking what you said seriously. Because of that, some people might come by today to ask you a few questions. Only if you're feeling strong enough. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. Like who? Detectives, he replied softly. Not to scare you. They just want to understand what you remember. You didn't just describe a feeling. You described details. Very specific ones. Things you couldn't have guessed. The girl didn't look surprised. She nodded slowly, almost resigned. I knew someone would come. He leaned forward. You don't have to speak to anyone if it feels too heavy. You're a child. You've been through something we don't fully understand. We'll protect you no matter what. She looked at him with a quiet firmness. If someone was trying to protect me back then, I think they would want me to speak now. Her voice trembled at the edges, but her eyes stayed steady. All right, the doctor said gently. We'll go at your pace. Not long after their conversation, two detectives arrived. They didn't wear heavy expressions or loud attitudes. Instead, they carried a calm energy, understanding they were walking into a delicate situation. One was older, with a thoughtful posture, and the other seemed younger but observant. The doctor greeted them outside the room and explained the girl's condition, making sure they knew not to push too hard. When they entered, they kept their voices soft. "Hello," the older detective said kindly. "We're here because your doctor told us you remembered something important. We just want to listen." The girl nodded, though she kept her gaze low. The younger detective pulled up a chair but didn't sit too close. "We know you're recovering, so if you need a break or want us to stop, you just tell us, all right?" "All right," she whispered. The older detective started gently. "Do you remember anything about a second car near the crash?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes. I didn't see the crash from inside it. I saw it from somewhere else. Like I was above everything. I saw the car that hit me, and I saw another one hide in the trees." The detectives exchanged a quick glance. "Did you see who was inside?" The younger one asked carefully. "No," she said. "Just shadows. But I felt like the person in that car was scared. Not scared of the crash. Scared of being seen." They remained still, listening. The girl took a small breath. "I heard voices too. A woman saying not to let someone find me. I don't know who she was." The older detective leaned slightly forward. "Do you remember anything else about her? Her face, her clothes? Anything small?" She shook her head. It was dark around her, but she held my hand. "I think she cared about me." The detectives didn't push. The doctor watched closely, ready to interrupt if she showed any signs of distress. After a moment, the younger detective spoke again. "You mentioned a name last night, a name none of us recognized. Do you remember saying it?" The girl hesitated. "I don't remember saying it, but I remember hearing it, somewhere inside my head." She paused. The name was part of the voices, like someone was warning me about him. The detectives nodded, not showing their reactions too strongly. The older one said softly, "The name you said belongs to someone we've been looking into for a while. So what you shared matters more than you know." The girl's eyes widened slightly. "So he's real?" "Yes," the detective said gently. "And your memory, your vision, your feeling, whatever it was, has helped us reopen an old case." The doctor watched as her expression shifted from fear to something deeper weight. Responsibility, confusion. "But I don't know this man," she whispered. "That's okay," the detective said. "You don't need to know him for your memory to matter." They asked a few more careful questions, but they didn't stay long. When they left, they thanked her sincerely. Outside the room, they spoke quietly with the doctor. And though their conversation couldn't be heard, their faces made one thing clear. Her words had changed everything. After they were gone, the girl sank back into her pillows, exhausted but strangely lighter. The doctor stayed beside her. "You did very well," he said softly. "How can I speak about things I don't remember living?" She asked. "There are things about the mind we still don't understand," he said. "Maybe these memories are pieces of something important you lived through. Maybe your brain held on to them for a reason." She looked out the window. "Do you think I'm strange?" "No," he said firmly. "I think you survived something hard, and now your mind is trying to help you understand it." She nodded faintly. The hospital remained calm for the rest of the morning. But inside the police station, her words were being taken apart, cross-checked and compared to old information. Her mention of a missing woman, the unusual behavior of a second car, and the mysterious name she had spoken became the focus of a new investigation. Meanwhile, back in her room, the girl tried to rest. But resting meant facing her mind again, and her mind was restless. Around noon, A soft rain began falling outside. She watched it hit the window in tiny drops. The sound was gentle, almost comforting. But as she watched, another flash of memory pressed forward. This one was clearer than the others. She saw herself sitting in a small room, wrapped in a blanket. A woman sat beside her. She couldn't see her face, but the woman smelled like soap and something warm. Someone outside the room was shouting, but the woman whispered, "Close your eyes. Don't listen." Then the memory faded again. She blinked, shaken. Moments later, the social worker arrived again. She carried a soft smile and a small notebook. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. "More tired," the girl murmured. "That's normal," the woman said. "You've had a heavier morning than most adults could handle." The girl looked at the notebook. "Are you writing about me?" "Just notes to help me understand what support you'll need," she said. "Nothing scary. You're a brave child, you know." The girl lowered her gaze. "I don't feel brave. I feel lost." "That's okay," the woman said. "Being lost isn't the same as being alone. And you are not alone." The girl seemed to absorb the words slowly, like she wasn't sure she deserved that reassurance. In the afternoon, the detectives called the hospital to share early findings. The doctor stepped outside to take the call. When he returned, his expression was different, concerned, but also determined. The girl noticed instantly. "Something happened?" He sat beside her. "The detectives found something in old case files. Something that connects to what you said. They want to speak with you again tomorrow, but only if you're strong enough." She nodded quietly. "I can do it." "You don't have to force yourself," he reminded. "I think the memories want to be seen," she said softly. "If I don't speak, they'll stay trapped." He didn't argue. Instead, he placed a careful hand on the edge of her blanket. "Then we'll be here with you through all of it." Evening settled in slowly. The rain stopped, leaving the world outside washed and quiet. The girl drifted between wakefulness and sleep, her mind still flickering with soft images of the woman who had once held her protectively, and the shadow of someone else lurking just out of sight. When night came, she whispered into the still room, "Who was she?" But no answer came, only a steady feeling inside her, a growing belief that the memories were leading her to the truth. And that the truth, once revealed, would change everything. Far beyond the hospital walls. Detectives were following leads sparked entirely by her words. And though she didn't know it yet, the person whose name she had spoken would soon be found. The past was waking up. Just like she had. The next morning arrived quietly, but inside the hospital, nothing felt quiet at all. The air around the girl's room carried a heaviness, as though something long hidden was finally preparing to rise to the surface. The girl woke early, long before the nurses began their rounds. She sat upright, staring at the window, watching the first soft rays of daylight fall across the floor. She didn't feel rested. Her sleep had been full of fragments. More memories, more whispers, more shadows she couldn't fully understand. But one moment stayed with her, a moment clearer than any she'd seen before. In that memory, the woman with the soft voice was kneeling in front of her, holding her shoulders and whispering fiercely, "I won't let them take you." But before the girl could see who the woman was talking to, the memory broke apart. The girl took a slow breath. Her chest ached with a strange mix of fear and longing. She didn't know why, but that woman's voice felt familiar. Not by memory, but by feeling. The doctor entered the room a little later. He greeted her with his usual gentle calm, though even he couldn't hide his worry. "Good morning," he said softly. "You look like you've been awake for a while." She nodded. "I remembered more things." He pulled up a chair immediately. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Later," she whispered. "When the detectives come. I want to say everything once." He respected that. Of course. They'll be here soon. We'll take it slowly. A nurse came in next, helping the girl sit more comfortably and bringing her a warm drink. The girl held the cup with careful hands, staring at the steam as though it carried secrets. Around mid-morning, the detectives returned. They entered quietly, not wanting to startle her or make her feel pressured. They carried the same calmness as before, but today there was a seriousness in their eyes. "Good morning," the older detective said softly. "We're here to listen again, just like before, and you can stop at any time." The girl looked at them, then at the doctor, then back at the detectives. She nodded slowly. "I remembered more," she said. "I don't know how, but I did." The younger detective leaned forward slightly, not close enough to overwhelm her, just close enough to show he was listening. "What did you remember?" he asked. The girl took a deep breath. "The woman, the one who told me not to let them find me. I think she knew I was in danger. I think she was hiding me somewhere." The detectives exchanged a quick glance. "Do you remember who she was?" the older one asked. The girl shook her head. "No, her face is still blurry. But she cared about me. She protected me." "And the danger?" the younger detective asked gently. "Do you remember anything more about it?" The girl hesitated. Her fingers curled around the blanket. "I saw a room, small, dark, and someone outside was shouting. The woman held me tight and told me not to make a sound." The detective stayed silent, letting her speak without interruption. "Then I heard the name again," the girl continued softly. "The same one I said the night I woke up. The name she whispered. She said he was coming." The detective's expressions hardened, not with anger, but with sudden understanding. "Do you remember anything else about him?" the older detective asked. "No," she whispered. "Only her fear." The younger detective reached into a folder, but didn't open it. He simply held it on his lap. "We need to share something with you. Something important. You don't have to respond to any of it. Just listen." The girl nodded slowly. "The name you spoke belongs to someone who has been investigated before," he said carefully. "For taking people. For hiding them. For hurting them." The doctor stiffened, though he tried to hide it. "But the case was closed," the detective continued, "because no one could find proof. No one could find the missing person connected to him." The girl's breath caught. "Missing person? Like the woman?" "Yes," the detective said softly. "She disappeared years ago. No trace. No clues. Nothing." The room fell completely silent. Then the older detective added, "And you are the first person to speak about her since she vanished." The girl's eyes widened. "Why me? I don't know her." "That's the part we're trying to understand," he replied. "But your memories match details from the old case. Things that weren't public. Things no one else would know." The girl's breathing quickened, but the doctor placed a hand gently on the side of her bed. "You're safe. Right here, you're completely safe." The detectives nodded. "Nothing can hurt you. We're here because you may help us understand what happened to her and what happened to you." She stared at them. "Do you think I knew her?" "We don't want to guess," the younger detective said softly. "But it's possible you were with her before the crash." The girl shook her head slowly. "But I don't remember waking up in a car. I don't remember being with anyone." "That's okay," the detective said. "The mind protects itself, especially after trauma. Memories hide to keep you safe. But now they're coming back because your mind is ready." The girl looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. "If she was trying to protect me, did something happen to her?" The older detective's expression softened with a sadness he couldn't hide. "We don't know. But we're going to find out." The girl swallowed hard. A deep ache formed in her chest, not from fear, but from something that felt like grief. She didn't understand why she felt so connected to a woman she couldn't even picture clearly. When I remember her voice, the girl whispered, "It feels like I lost someone important." The doctor rested his hand gently on her arm. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind remembers. The detectives didn't stay much longer. They thanked her again, promising to work carefully and quietly to uncover the truth. When they left, the room felt strangely hollow. After they were gone, the girl sat in silence, staring at the small ripples her breath made in the blanket. The doctor stayed nearby, giving her space but not leaving her alone. A little later, the social worker arrived. She sat beside the girl and spoke softly. "You did something very brave today." The girl shook her head. "I just talked." "That takes courage," the woman replied, "especially when the truth is heavy." The girl looked up at her, eyes glistening. "I don't want the woman to be gone." The social worker reached out gently. "We don't know what happened yet, but because of you, she has a voice again, and no one can take that away." Hours passed slowly. The girl rested a little, though her sleep was shallow. The doctor checked on her often, making sure she was comfortable. Nurses came and went, offering warm smiles. But something inside the girl was shifting. Memories, emotions, shadows, everything was rising to the surface dot as evening crept into the room. She felt another memory stirring. This time, it didn't come as a flash. It came softly, like someone whispering a story from far away. She remembered hands guiding her through a dark hallway. She remembered being lifted, carried quietly. She remembered someone wiping her tears and saying, "Please don't forget I love you." The girl gasped and covered her mouth. The nurse hurried to her side. "What happened? What did you see?" The girl's voice cracked. "She said she loved me." The nurse held her hand. "Who?" "The woman," she whispered. I think she knew me. I think she cared for me. Maybe she was trying to save me." The nurse squeezed her hand gently. "You're getting closer to the truth." The girl nodded weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I want to remember her. All of her." "You will," the nurse replied. "In time." Night began to fall. The room warmed under the soft glow of a small bedside lamp. The girl lay awake, listening to the gentle hum of the machines. Finally, she spoke quietly into the room, though no one else was there. "If she protected me, I want to protect her now." And she meant it. The truth was no longer something she feared. It was something she needed. Even if remembering hurt Dot outside the hospital, the detectives followed new leads, connecting her memories to old evidence and long-forgotten clues. And for the first time in years, the case that had been silent began to breathe again. Inside the hospital room, the girl closed her eyes and felt a strange calm settle in her chest. She didn't have all the answers yet. She didn't know why she had been hidden, who had chased her, or what had happened to the woman who loved her. But she knew one thing: she was not lost. Any more. The memories were coming back. The truth was coming, and she wasn't facing it alone. Not this time.